Hello.
Hello, welcome back. Welcome to our Dalmatians tale in the frame. We are the Synchronicity Sisters. I'm Megan.
I'm Nicole.
Welcome to our channel. Thanks for being here. Welcome to our podcast. Wherever you're listening, watching, we're happy to have you for another episode of how to live a better life.
Well, our company slogan is change your brain, change your life. So, if you can change your thought patterns and stuff. Shiloh is making her appearance in the studio today. She's being crazy, but gotta love her. She always adds a little extra to our show. I think the topic today is we're talking about communication and how it heals trauma, and it's a big part of what we do and how we've journeyed into doing a lot of our own healing work and still do the work every day in regards to how we communicate, what we communicate, and how we show up. So I think today's a fun topic to talk about because a lot of people aren't talking about how important communication is. They're just talking about how to air quote heal.
Right. And the thing that most people are missing is, like Nicole said, the communication key, because your trauma will come out in how you communicate. So if you have a problem taking up space, right, you won't communicate. You won't have wants, needs, or desires. And even if you do, you won't communicate them. So you see trauma come out in how somebody interacts with another through how they communicate. Whether it's not communicating like an avoidant does, or over communicating and throwing your shit all over somebody else, which is more of the anxious attachment style. You really see somebody's difficulties and traumas, and also like what they need to work on how they communicate, whether they can hold space for somebody else, whether they're not willing to hold space for somebody else, all of these things. So your trauma comes out through those, and how you actually heal trauma is to learn how to communicate in a secure, grounded way, and either from your masculine or your feminine, and being aware of what all of those mean, how to do it. It is what we teach, coach. How we really maneuver somebody's energy is through the throat chakra, through the communication center, through the broca in the brain. There's so many different things, but I would say that the number one thing that we work with in the brain is the broca, and changing the scripting, and through changing the script in the brain, you change the communication style.
So I want you to elaborate on script, because I know what you mean, but people have never heard that before because most people don't talk about scripting.
So part of our work is transactional analysis, which is scripts people live or scripts people play. And your scripting is the script that your parents gave you as a child that they wrote, because we have mirror neurons in the brain, right? So your script is your mirror neurons. How did your parents treat themselves? How did they treat each other? How did they interact with you? You're writing a script, right? It's no different than you think of like a play or anything that you're reading off a script. You are reading off a script that your parents and your authority figures wrote when you were a child. So if they were screwed up, your script is screwed up, and that is the play, the character you play in your play. So when we rewrite a script, we change the patterning in the communication. So we re-script your script, because if you don't change that, you cannot change anything.
Yeah, and ideally what has happened is trauma is caused by the lack thereof of communication within a child in a household. When a child is not allowed to take up space, or is, there's no space for communication, there's no space for needs, that's when you develop avoidant or anxious attachments, right? And that, like you were saying, it's whether they over communicate, under communicate, leave space for someone else, not leave space for someone else. It's all one way or another. But when it boils down to, it's really the part of the brain, the broca, the communication center, has been atrophied. And that person is now stuck in that script until they're able to no longer function in the scripting that their parents gave them, and they're able to step into their own power and their own communication and be able to change that part of their brain.
Right. So when we look at that, we look at, who who do you want to show up as? What's the script that you actually want to be the actor in? Because we're essentially all in a play, and we're just playing out our scripts that we have learned,
Right.
like I said. And so, you know, we get to choose our characters in life, and we forget that, and we're not told that, and we're not empowered to do that by the majority of our parents in today's world, because they weren't taught that. You know, it's not that our parents want to fuck us up or traumatize us or like do any of these things. That's not the desire of the majority of parents. Most parents are not, you know, dark. I don't even know how to say it. Yeah, malicious.
Malice.
They just don't know any better. So what we do is we kind of refer to ourselves as like rent-a-moms because we change the parent pattern in the brain.
Right.
And we change the parent script, which essentially changes every other script because it's the dominant script in the unconscious. And so we introduce choice into the matrix that is the brain, that is life, that is all of these things. And it's the missing piece that, you know, modern day psychology and things don't look at, is like, what was the script that was written, you know, and how do we change it? It's not going over and over and over to the script and continuing to play out the same thing over and over again. It's like, no, how do I eject that script and put in a new script? And that's what was done for both of us. And that's what we have chosen to make our lives work and other people. And we use things like microdosing and things to assist in the re-scripting of the brain, the re-scripting of the Broca, which is in the, it was found by Paul Broca. We didn't really explain that.
Center of the brain, yeah.
The communication center of the brain. So we reprogrammed that, you know, and for so long, you know, there's a really good book, The Brain That Changes Itself by Norman Gojkovic. I think I'm saying that wrong, but you can look it up. For so long, we thought we couldn't change the brain once it was developed. But now we know different. Right. And it's so exciting to be able to have like psychedelics and all of these things that are tools to be able to, you know, actually assist in becoming who you want to be.
Well, and there's a big difference, like psilocybin and like psychedelics, they soften the neuroplasticity, allowing for you to upgrade your system. Like ideally the brain in the book change, the book Megan just referred to, what's the name of it? It's I always get the
brain that changes itself.
Yeah, I always get the name of it wrong. Originally they just thought it was like a hard drive, right? Like once it was there and put in, like it couldn't change, just like Meg said. And now we're starting, modern day science has really started to do a lot more research in regards to like neuroplasticity, and they're starting to really see that brain can regenerate, the brain can fix itself, the brain can, and they're seeing it with like, you know, traumatic brain injuries and things like that. Like the University of Florida is doing a lot of research with ayahuasca and brain trauma and stuff like that, and like showing that the brain can actually regenerate itself. And so this is really cool because neuroplasticity is literally allowing neurons that fire together, wire together. It's softening that, allowing us to put in ideally new code. So we're no different than a computer program. Like we're just upgrading software, but we don't know what new software is until someone introduces a new way of thinking or a new way of communicating or a new way of, and then you're able to say, oh, well, now that old software is gone. And so it's exactly, yes, we work in the neuroplasticity when an individual is working with us and microdosing, but with just working in the neuroplasticity, we're able to shift other parts of the brain, like the Broca, and we're able to rewire the nervous system. Like there's so much happening with being able to give an individual the permission to say, hey, like you have the right to communicate. Here's a healthy way of communicating. And then that part of the brain lights up, the Broca turns on, the neuroplasticity is shifting, and like all of this stuff works coherently to be able to actually remove trauma from the body and the brain in real time. And so it's super, it's so cool how the science is like moving finally towards being aware of this. And it's really fascinating. Like we have an uncle, he's a neurologist, like he does brain surgery all the time. And he like told Meg, like, yeah, like we've known about this for, you know, brain surgeons have known about this for a long time. Like, welcome to the party, you know, because they deal with the brain all the time, but science has to catch up with them. And science is finally starting to catch up with it, and it's starting to actually prove what is happening. Right. And so, Paul Broca, he was deemed this like crazy person, quite literally, by the internet because of some of his beliefs. But his science was amazing. He was proving, even like back when he was around, which was like, I want to say like the early 20s.
It was the 1800s.
1800s. Okay. I wanted to go there, but I was like, maybe that. But they deemed him, they labeled him a few things. And so his science was kind of thrown out. And now we're actually seeing that coming to fruition, almost 100 years later.
Yeah, I mean, again, if you've listened to other podcasts by us, we have one about alphas, and he was probably a dark alpha because he was racist and kind of an asshole, but that doesn't mean he wasn't brilliant. Like, there's a lot of, people that have created unbelievable stuff, but they're, not nice human beings. It's like,
Freud.
Sigmund Freud and how modern day psychology followed him, I'll never know. But, I mean, there's plenty of people that aren't nice that are brilliant.
Yeah, absolutely.
And, again, it's just everything is, even they're finding now that like sound heals, right? So the voice, the sound that comes out of it, what you're saying to somebody can heal. And so it's taking that understanding of things are healed when they're talked about, but they're healed when space is held, when communication is healthy, when you're allowing somebody else to take up space. And I think the biggest thing is that we think that people don't have a right to be themselves. We've been taught like, well, you can't do that. And that's actually not true. People have a right to be who they are, even if it's an asshole or not. Like Paul Broca, he was a dick, right? Not a nice person. I don't, we obviously don't believe in racism at all. So, you have to allow people autonomy. And I think that's the biggest thing that I've taken away from learning communication is just like, I used to be super self-righteous of just like, well, you can't do that. Yes, they can.
Yes.
I am not in control of anybody but myself. And if I try to control anybody but myself, I am being dysfunctional.
Yes.
I am being anxious attachment. I am being mother archetype. If you've listened to our other podcasts, not, go listen to them and you'll know more of what I'm talking about. But, you have to allow autonomy.
Yes.
And that's the biggest thing with communication, among other things. If you want to work with us, and we'll tell you all of the secrets to this. But this is the biggest takeaway is just learn to allow people to be who they are. And even if you don't approve, it doesn't matter. We have to learn in our society because we're so just like black and white, right and wrong, this and that. And like that might be the morals and the ethics that you adhere to, but that doesn't mean that that's right or that is that other people are able to do that. Right. So we have to allow autonomy. As hard as it is, we really have to learn that, because when we allow somebody to be where they're at and who they are in that moment, we allow for them to take up space. And I think the biggest wound that exists right now and the biggest trauma is that people are afraid to be themselves. And authenticity is so important because that's what children have that adults don't. And when we're learning how to heal, we're learning how to be that innocent, authentic self. And it's destroyed because we don't allow autonomy in our society. And so, it doesn't mean that we need to allow people to like do crimes or things like that. But if somebody's just being a jerk,
they have every right to be.
They have every right to be a jerk. And it sucks. And you might be like, you have every right to be a jerk, but like, I do not appreciate you acting like a jerk. But that's how you say it. You don't just go, you can't act like that. Yes, they can, because they're probably being a jerk because somebody told them that they couldn't do that, and they're rebelling against, authority, and rightfully so. So, we take that we take children's autonomy away from them, we take adults, and it has just created so much pain, and not even pain, suffering. Pain is non-negotiable. But yeah, just take up space, let other people.
Well, but that's, there's a lot of things on the internet right now. Like, are you an avoidant attachment? Are you anxious attachment? Are you secure attachment? Are you, I don't know. I saw one the other day. It was like a hybrid attachment style. And I was like, oh my God, like there's so many labels, right? Like, you're this, you're this, you're this, you're this, you're this. And we're such like a pill happy label society. Like, you get on social media and you can like self-diagnose yourself in a matter of like 15 minutes. You could be like ADHD with anxious hybrid attachment with a chronic hangnail disorder. I mean, like, it literally, like, it goes like, I mean, you can like literally give yourself this insane title in a matter of 15 minutes on social media, when in reality, like, the baseline of it is an avoidant under communicates, doesn't hold space for someone else. Anxious over communicates, usually has a tendency to like mother and be like over emotional.
Yeah, they put their shit on other people.
Yeah, they constantly are throwing energy. They're very volatile.
Yeah.
You know, avoidants usually shut down. They just don't have a voice. Most likely they were raised in a very abusive household where they weren't allowed to have a voice. You know, both, right? Depending on the circumstances. And what our goal is to help individuals understand that secure attachment is very easily achievable through practice of understanding you have a voice. And with that voice, you can have boundaries. And with that voice, you learn quite quickly that if you are even in a relationship with an avoidant and you start communicating things, they start to like, oh my God, what's happening? Or an anxious attachment will like freak out. Like, you start to actually see what you've surrounded yourself with when you become really secure, and you give people, like Megan said, the autonomy to be who they are. But it's all in how you are expressing yourself and how you're going about it, and you're secure in your words and you're secure in yourself. But it all, like we always say, it always boils down to self-love. Are you willing to take up the space and the time and in the place correctly and give other people the space to be who they are?
Well, I mean, you attract what you are. So avoidants attract anxious attachments, because it's like what they're trying to learn, right? Because secure attachment is when you put the two together technically and like learn when to be quiet and when to speak up, and like it's a balance. So you have two unbalanced individuals trying to balance each other. And you know, I see so much online about like narcissists and blah 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 blah, and like how to avoid narcissists. If you have healthy communication skills,
secure attachment will not attract.
You're not going to attract it. So again, it all comes out, and you know, and I have exes that are full blown narcissists, and I was an avoidant attachment. And we went back and forth. You can actually be both, right? And then when they would shut down, I'd become anxious, and like it would just be this game of cat and mouse that's really ugly. And when I became a secure attachment, it's like,
okay,
like those people just fall away, because my identity and my self-love and my self-worth is not wrapped up in another person. If yours is, you have trauma that you're not dealing with, and you're still trying to save your parents, you know, and you still have a jacked up relationship with yourself. And it's all how we communicate and the communication skills that we learned. So this is really the heart and soul of our work, is communication. And it's so simple. I was actually just dumbfounded that it actually is like so simple, but it's such a nightmare to actually implement, because I would have like panic attacks and literally be vomiting when I'd have to like speak up, because I really tended towards avoidant. But so I was like, oh my God, I have to like express my feelings. Like, I feel was the hardest thing for me to learn how to say, because I'd always like, I think. And it's like, no. What do you feel? So you know you've got some serious trauma, especially ladies, when you just say, I think all the time. So really look at like the words you're saying, because I feel is really important for the feminine to learn how to say. It was like I would like gag every time.
Well, and it's so funny because like Meg struggles with avoidant personality. Like, she has always had that kind of avoidant, and like I've always kind of had the anxiousness of like, oh my God, like people pleasing, like just love me, like don't hate me, like and in that, it's funny because like our communication between my sister and I, Megan and I, like, we can have a podcast, but we can also, we've done a lot of work together that even like when we get into little tips, I'm like, no, you're avoiding this. And now I need to talk about this. And like, oh my God. And like, we have to talk about it now. And she's like, give me a minute. Like, I need to process this. And it's secure attachment. It's learning what attachment styles is. And it's like, you start to recognize it over time. Like, oh, I'm actually healing this. We can talk about it, or I can give that person space, and we don't have to solve the problem right here, right now. It's understanding that it's not like yesterday we were talking to a client of ours, and it's like, we're, as a society, we are so like instant gratification, like Amazon Prime, it'll be on our doorstep, right? But we're in it for the long haul. Like, you're going to always potentially slip back into it. You just slip less. And you become more aware of it, right? Yeah. And so, like, those little slips become like, oh, oops, like, hold on, let me, like, recognize this. Instead of before, when it's just, like, so volatile and so crazy and, like, emotional, it's just like, oh, okay, like, I recognize this, and this individual needs space and time to process, and they'll circle back around when they're ready. And it's giving that other, like we said earlier, that autonomy that's allowed in communication.
Well, right. And you really realize whether you're being the doormat or the bully, because so often, like, avoidants are bullies. Well, it kind of just depends.
It depends. Anyways, they can be both.
Yeah, it flips depending back and forth.
Depending on what words are used, tone, all of that.
Yeah, because anxious can be bullies too, of like, you need to talk to me, and I need space. But anyway, it's just really important that we recognize the fight for potency versus the fight for power, because so many people use their voice and their communication to gain power over somebody else versus how to grow and develop and see the other person and allow people to take up space versus just dominating the conversation and making it whatever outcome they want and forcing that kind of a narrative in a conversation. And it just doesn't allow everyone to be heard. And being heard is a huge wound. It's a huge thing. It's just, we do not realize how precious our voices really are. And they're how we connect with people. It's our first introduction into any relationship other than you see somebody, but your voice is what connects you to, and really expresses who you are. And it's just so underrated and so underutilized and so underdeveloped. And, it's something that Nicole and I really want to bring to better consciousness, is just how important the voice and the communication is. And that's why, like I said earlier, it's just the heart of what we really bring to the table as, mentors, coaches, rent moms, whatever you want to call us.
Well, and also because we're wrapping this up, like, men and women completely communicate differently. Like, men process way slower than women. We can just women can think and feel. We can blah, 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 blah. And like, a lot of times women will dominate the conversation because of the way they process so quickly.
Right.
That, I know that I have had to really, even just like communicating with my dad and other men, I have to really take a moment, say what I need to say, and then shut up. Just shut up. Don't say anything. Let him process and then let him respond. Because men take a little bit longer, especially if they're right-handed. Their brain is not working as quickly as ours. And being aware of that, men and women communicate completely differently, is huge in relationships.
When we will do a podcast on that, because that's
we'll
really,
dive
really
way
important.
deeper. But I just wanted to give a nugget for that one.
I think because that's really an important point.
Although we all have the same brocas and we all struggle with anxious, avoidant, secure, whatever, the way in which it's done is a completely different ballgame. But of course, we will do that in a different podcast where we can definitely dig deeper into the difference between men and women and how we communicate. But for now,
thanks for being here.
Like, share, comment. If you don't like us, you're welcome. If you do love us, like, share, tell all of your friends about us, follow us on Instagram, and until next time, bye.